Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Musician's Mentor podcast. I'm your host, Travis Mark, and although we haven't spoken about it before, I've been doing this interview podcast kind of thing for a number of years now, and during the course of this past week, I found an old interview that I had done with the late great Mr. Roy Burns, an American-born drummer who rose to fame in Benny Goodman's band, also used to play alongside Woody Herman. He was the second ever cover feature on the Modern Drummer magazine. He was also the drummer on The Tonight Show and the Merv Griffin Show for about 12 years. So this guy was the real deal. For the drummers who are listening, he is also one of the partners that set up the Aquarian Drumhead company. This guy was a massive influence on me as a musician. And when I read his old mindset articles that used to get featured in the Modern Drummer magazines, I still find him to be quite the mentor. So yeah, this interview may be a little drum heavy in comparison to usual, but I just thought Roy has so much insight and information that it would be tragic if this thing was never published. So that's what's on the agenda for today. I'm going to put out this archived interview with the one and only Mr. Roy Burns, and I truly hope you enjoy it because I have such fond memories of the couple conversations that I had with him. As usual, before we jump into this, please let me remind you to head to your favorite streaming platform and leave us a rating or review. It's extremely helpful for us. And don't forget to check out the affiliation with the lovely folks over at Soundbrenner. The links are in the show notes. But for now, to celebrate what would have been his up-and-coming 89th birthday, please join me in welcoming the unfortunately late but extremely great Mr. Roy Burns.
Hello, this is Roy.
Hey Roy, how you doing?
Very good, Travis. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Is this a good time to talk?
Great. It certainly is. Amazing.
Let me just start by saying thanks for taking the time to do this. It's very much appreciated. I never in a million years would have thought I would have spoken to the legendary Roy Burns, whose articles I used to read in Modern Drummer. So thank you so much. I'm very excited.
Oh, good. Well, it's nice to talk with you. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, thank you. So let's start.
I'm ready.
I mean, obviously, you've had such an illustrious career. I mean, people like me who've been drumming for years, we know all about you. And I'd like to think that everybody knows about drummers such as yourself. But could you maybe just delve into your background a little bit and tell us about what initially interested you in drumming and what attracted you to drums as an instrument?
Well, it started pretty early. When I was about 5 years old, I used to listen to the cadets in marching format at the local college 2 blocks away. They're military, and they would do marching maneuvers just with the drum section. So I would often run away from home, which didn't make my mother too happy, and walk along beside the drummers because I admired them, and I loved the sound. So one of the drummers asked me one day, he said, can you play? And I said, sure. So he handed me the sticks, and I started playing on his snare drum, and he flipped out. So he went to see my mother and said it'd be a crime if you don't give this kid lessons. He's a natural. You've got to do it. So she prevailed on my father, who was less enthusiastic, and that's how it all started. So I used to practice on the sidewalk in front of my house for hours.
Amazing.
Along with the drumming going on 2 blocks away at the college.
Okay.
And that was my start. So then I took drum lessons. My father gave me an edict. He said, now listen, if the teacher just once tells me you didn't practice, that's the end of the lessons. The lessons in those days were 50 cents.
Okay. Where
I lived in Kansas. It wasn't very much money. So I was practicing 4 or 5 hours a day, and my father finally went to my mother and said, we've got to make him stop. I can't stand it. What are we going to do with him? He said, well, Lester, you said to him, if you didn't practice, you weren't going to let him take lessons. So he's just doing what you told him to do.
Yeah.
He said, we got to make a new rule. No drumming on Sundays. And that was the rule of the household. So I haven't played drums on a Sunday unless I had a gig all these years. But that's how I got started.
That's amazing. I mean, obviously you're very young and you were practicing that much. What did your general practice routine consist of back then? Like, were you just focusing on rudiments on a pad, or were you practicing like full things on a drum kit already?
Well, I had a snare drum and a practice pad. And I finally got some lessons from the head of the music department at the local college. It was a local teachers college, and thank goodness for that college, because I don't think I would have gotten out of Kansas without it. But in any case, he was a very nice man. He was a violinist.
Okay.
But he was a good musician, and he would say to me, Roy, you've got great hands, but you've got to use your noodle. That was his favorite expression.
Yeah.
You've got to think about music. You have to think about what you're playing. You can't just bang away, you know.
Yeah. And
he made a great impression on me. So I took lessons, and then my parents got me a drum set, and they built a room on the one corner of our house. You could get a drum set in it and a record player, not much else. And I used to practice in there for hours, and people would say to my mother, how do you stand it? How can you stand it? Listen to that drumming. She says, listen, at least I know where he is. If I hear him practicing, I know he's not in any trouble.
Yeah.
So my mother was a great supporter. And then I got into a dance band when I was 14, because the drummer in town sold me his drum set. He left to go teach school. So that's how I got into the band. It was nobody else. So I was working with all these guys that had been in World War II and going back to college on the GI Bill of Rights.
Wow. So
these were more experienced men. They weren't boys anymore. They'd been through the military service and everything. And they kind of kept me in line. They wouldn't let me do anything wrong. And they were all great guys. And I just practiced like a demon, because I wanted to get out of Kansas and I wanted to play the drums. Yeah. And I knew the two activities were somehow related. Yeah. And yes, I just remind your listeners that there was no television, no airplanes to speak of, no high form of travel. When you were stuck in Kansas, you were stuck in Kansas. Yeah. So to get out of there, I finally went on the road with a band that my teacher helped me get a hold of when I was 19. And prior to that, I had met Louis Belson at a drum studio in Kansas City, which is about 4.5 hours from my home. So I used to take a 4.5 hour train ride in each direction to take a drum lesson. Wow. Because it was either that or nothing, you know? Yeah. And Louis Belson came to the studio, and he heard me play, and he says, kid, you're as good as you're going to get if you stay in Kansas. Go to L.A. or New York and study. So 2 years later, when I was 19, I took $300, a drum set, and went to New York City on a train. It took 4.5 days. Wow. And that was my burst into the music scene, you know.
Yeah, but that's cool, because straight away you can almost sense the determination and the motivation, or the passion, if you want to use that word, for your instrument. You know, I have this discussion with drummers and drum teachers quite often, and I'm stereotyping, of course, but it seems like a lot of young up-and-coming drummers don't seem to necessarily have that same motivation as people such as yourself. What do you think the reasons are behind that?
Well, all I can tell you is my mother used to tell me. She said, Roy has some kind of special drive. I don't know where he gets it. Of course, my mother was like a Marine drill sergeant. She was hard as nails, but in a loving way. Yeah. But she was very supportive. But she used to say I had this drive. And I knew I wanted to be a professional drummer. And I knew I wanted to be as good as I could be. And I believed that I could be very good. But that's all thinking ahead, you know. But I figured out that I would rather fail at drumming than to not try and never know. The thought of not finding out if I could have made it would have been more horrible than failing. So I just had to know if I was going to be good enough. Yeah. And then I went to New York, and the rest is history, you know.
Who were some of your early influences back then?
Well, the only records that you could buy were 78, you know, the 3-minute record. Mm-hmm. And there weren't too many drummers featured in those days, so you could get records by Gene Krupa and his band, some by Buddy Rich, and then a little later on in my youth, Louis Belson, and then some of the other drummers like Philly Joe Jones and Kenny Clark I listened to a little later. Mm-hmm. But the swing era drummers were my main influence. And I would say today, if I were still playing, I would be classified as a swing big band drummer. Okay. Because that's the music I grew up with. And the funny thing was, when I got to New York, after I'd been there a while, I was the only young drummer that could play the older man's music.
Oh, cool.
So I got a chance to work with all these great old musicians because I looked young, and I looked younger than I was, and I was always very respectful. So they liked me, and they liked the way I played, and the fact that I could play their style. I could set the bass drum forward to the bar, play the hi-hats, play brushes, do all the things that you have to play with them.
Yeah. So
I worked with Coleman Hawkins and Teddy Wilson and Benny Goodman and Woody Herman and Lionel Hampton and Charlie Shavers, and the list goes on and on. I was very fortunate.
Yeah, you've worked with some amazing people. Which brings me to my next question, actually. When was the moment that you kind of realized that, I mean, obviously you knew you wanted to be a drummer and you wanted to try and make it, but what do you think was the defining moment where you kind of sat back and thought, I can actually make this work. This could be my career. I could make money.
Well, I was on Woody Herman. I was on Woody Herman's band. The band was in dire straits. We were traveling by car, 4 or 5 cars, and the guy driving our car was drunk half the time. And I thought, I got to get away from this band. They just don't have any money. Not that I was trying to get rich, but just to be safe.
Yeah.
So I get a call from Benny Goodman's manager when I have a week off in New York City, and said that Benny would like you to come up to the Carnegie Hall rehearsal studios and audition. Benny wants to hear you play. He's heard about you. I said, well, I'm with Woody. He said, no, he said, come on up. Benny will take care of that. So I went up to the Carnegie Hall rehearsal studios, very fancy place. And in this big room, there's Mel Powell, about 6'5", the piano player, and Benny Goodman and me. And I didn't know that Mel Powell was a famous arranger or a famous piano player at that time, because I'd never heard of him. Mm. But he was really a great player. So Benny says, let's play Lady Be Good. So I get the brushes out. We start playing. We play one tune after another for 2 hours without stopping. Mm. And he put his clarinet down on the piano, and he looked at me and says, be at the Waldorf tonight, wear a dark suit. And I walked out. I didn't even know where the Waldorf was. I had a dark suit. Mel Powell said, how do I get there? You know? Yeah. And I had one suit, a charcoal gray suit that barely fit me. Because I was so skinny, I only weighed 119 pounds. Mm. So I get to the Waldorf, and I'm sitting up in the corner. It's like a sunken ballroom with tiers for tables for food and stuff. So they would play a dance set, a concert set, and a dance set. The manager comes up to me after I've been sitting there an hour and a half or so and says, Benny wants you to play the next concert set. So I had to go down and meet Mousy Alexander, the regular drummer in the band, to audition on his drums. And he said, look, don't worry about me. I've already given my notes. I'm leaving the band, so you're not interfering with me. He said, this is a hell of a way to audition on someone else's drums, sight reading in front of a live audience and a concert set at that. He said, I'll help you all I can. I'll talk you through the charts, and I'll help you as much as possible. So I did a really good job on the show. And Mel Powell leaned through the piano and shook my hand and said, congratulations, young man. And Mousy said, wow, you really listened. You played that show just like I did, and on my drums with no rehearsal and sight reading in front of a live audience. He said, I hope you get the gig. Just play as steady as you can, because music to Benny Goodman is time. So I got the gig.
Yeah.
That was my trial by fire. I figured if I could get through that without getting nervous, I could get through about anything.
Yeah, that's a pretty high-pressure situation.
Yeah, I would say so.
I was asking you earlier about who some of your early influences were. Do you, I mean, obviously you have an Aquarian, and we'll get to that a little bit later, but have you got any sort of drummers, current drummers, who are maybe influential? Or, I mean, I know you're not doing much playing anymore and stuff like that, but are there any guys that really stick out to you nowadays?
Well, I can't answer that in that sense, but I will say this. There are more great young drummers today than ever before.
Yeah.
When I was coming up, there were a few guys that had good chops, and I was one of them. And most guys didn't, or just had mediocre chops. And not that that's a criticism, but just a fact of life.
Yeah. Now
the guys out there are fantastic. I mean, I'm not an old drummer living in the past. I hear a lot of young guys, and I'll tell you, guys that you've never heard of will scare you. Mm. There's just so many good young players, and I think it's a wonderful thing, because I thought my clinics contributed to that, along with a lot of other people, because the drummers used to be ridiculed, like 9 musicians and a drummer, Oh, you had music for those things, or I just had a beat on them. Oh, you can actually play music on a drum? What's that for? And all those kind of deprecating comments, that's not happening anymore. Usually today, with a current rock band, very often the drummer's the best player on the stage.
Yeah.
Because they've got more training. The secret's out of the bottle, so to speak. They get good teachers in the beginning. And I just think it's wonderful we have so many great young drummers today. I can't pick out specific ones, but there's a lot of them, and I enjoy hearing them all.
That's great. Let's talk about your clinics there for a second. I was talking to a British drumming icon, a guy named Lloyd Ryan. I was talking to him a few weeks ago.
Sure.
And we actually got talking about you because you turned out to be a huge inspiration to him. And I mean, in his career, he did about 700 clinics in this country. And when I was asking him how or what inspired him to do that, it was you. You know, I mean, you're pretty much known for inventing the drum clinic. So how did that come about? What made you think, hey, what if I shove a whole bunch of interested drummers in a room and I basically do a showcase? I could do this. So how did the idea for clinics come about?
Well, Rogers Drums, I had signed on with them as an endorser when the company was first getting started. And Henry Adams said they're nice people and they're going to improve the drums. So I went over to meet them there. The only time the NAMM show was held in New York City, where I was living. And they turned out to be very nice people, and the drums were good, and they had plans to make them even better. So I became a Rogers endorser. Well, then they wanted an elementary drum book that they could sell under the Rogers name with a drummer as an author that had not been associated with any other publications regarding a brand of drums. Mm-hmm. So the Rogers elementary drum method was an offshoot of the Roy Burns elementary method, which they requested. So they were talking to Henry Adler, and they said, who can we get to do this? And Henry says, well, you can't have Roy. I don't even know if that occurred to me or occurred to them. So they said, why not? I said, well, Roy's name is not big enough yet. And they said, well, we think it is. Henry says, let's go into my office. So later on, Henry said, it's a good thing you kept your mouth shut. He says, those guys always want what you tell them they can't have. So he got my name pushed into the picture. So I did some clinics with him, and what happened, when I was busy doing record dates and a lot of studio work, I wasn't available to do clinics. When I had time off or I had a couple of weeks where there wasn't much work, they didn't need me. So finally, Rogers came to me and said, would you like to work for Rogers on a full-time basis? I said, doing what? He said, well, do clinics, be like an artist in residence, play concerts, attend conventions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I talked over with my wife, and I said, I think I'm going to do this. She said, oh, this is going to stick you behind the desk. I said, no, it's not that kind of job. I'm going to be traveling a lot. You're going to have to put up with that. So at any rate, I started doing the clinics for them, and it was a big hit. So the first clinic I did, we got to the question and answer session. And the guy says, how do you get a good chick on your hi-hat? Meaning the chick sound of the two-step. I said, buy her a drink. And everybody started laughing like crazy. And I was hooked, man. I was coming up with more jokes. I mean, that was a turning point for the clinics. So when I came off the stage, this elderly man, big, tall guy, came up to me and said, you play very well, young man, but you're holding that left hand all wrong. I thought he was kidding because my left hand was especially good. Yeah. I said, well, I realize that, sir. It's just that it's been working so good lately, I hate to fool around with it. He said, I don't like your attitude. I said, why not? He said, I'll have you know I've been teaching the drums for 30 years. I said, sir, it sounds to me like you taught 1 year 30 times. There's a difference, you know.
Yeah.
And those two incidents that happened in the same clinic kind of pointed me in that direction. I realized there were a lot of kids out there that were interested, who were very sincere. They just wanted somebody to give them some good information.
Yeah.
The other thing was, this was before all the CDs and the internet and all that stuff. You couldn't see anybody play in person. Or if you saw them play, it would be in person. But like the day where you could go in and buy all these videos and stuff of guys playing, you couldn't do that then. So you either went to a Roy Burns clinic or you didn't see anybody play in person.
Yeah.
That maybe a local nightclub drummer. Yeah. So that was one of the reasons it became successful. And I was the first guy to do them. And I had good training. I had good teachers. So I tried to make certain that each clinic, each guy would get something out of the clinic. So it'd be informative, hopefully funny, and do some good playing for them to inspire them to practice. And that's how I got started. I did 2 weeks of clinics every month for 12 years.
Crazy.
I think I hold the record for doing the most number of clinics. And it was a new drum set every time. I had to tune a new drum set. So one time I get to this clinic, and the boxes are all on the stage, and the store is full. There's 200 people there. They didn't take the drums out of the boxes. They just left them in there. I said, well, could you at least help me take the drums out of the boxes?
Yeah.
So we took the drums out, and I'm talking to the audience and tuning and setting up. And finally, I played something. And I said, see, these aren't special drums. They came right out of the box. I tuned them up, and I played on them, and they sounded good. And that became I didn't do that as a standard bit because it took too much work to get everything set up while you're talking and doing the clinic. But there were a few times that happened that made a big imprint, a good example for the guys that this is not rocket science, you know. We're not working on a cure for cancer. We're just talking about playing the drums. And if you don't play well one day, no one's going to come over to your house later and beat you up, you know. Yeah. This is music. It's supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be competitive or jealous or negative. It should be a celebration that you're lucky enough to play the drums and get paid a little bit for it. That's really wonderful, you know. Yeah. I'm very pro music, and I love music.
Yeah, and it's great. It's great to hear. You can hear that you're still very passionate about it. You know, it's very inspiring, Roy. Thank you, man.
Well, it's how I feel.
Let's talk a little bit about Aquarian and how Aquarian started. What was the story there? What made you want to start that?
Well, I got tired of working for idiots. The people at CBS, they hired them, were corporate guys, very arrogant, didn't know anything about the music business, and had taken over Rogers Drums when CBS bought it. And it was just one decision after another. And I went home one day and told my wife, I said, you know, I think I want to start my own business. She said, you must be crazy. I said, I can't be any dumber than the guys that are ruining Rogers Drums. They got the greatest product going, the most inventive product company, and they're ruining it. They're driving it into the ground. And so my wife said, maybe you should see somebody. I mean, like a psychiatrist. She says, well, they are from CBS. I said, give me a break. I know what I'm doing. And there was a man by the name of Ron Marquez, and he did powder coating. You seen the black stuff on amplifiers and camera equipment and stuff like that? That's a special process of using powder, and it produces a very durable surface. Well, he was doing the black stuff on the Rogers pedals and all that stuff in this very building I'm sitting in right now. And it was called powder coating. And so one day I get a call, and he says, Roy Burns? I said, yeah. He said, listen, I wonder why I'm not getting any more work out of Rogers Drums. I said, well, they're really in trouble, and I'm going to quit. So don't do that. He says, come by my factory, my office, and let's talk a little bit today. I'm interested in expanding. So I came by this building, and Ron and I sat and talked. And he said, why are you leaving? I said, well, it's just one bad decision after the other, and I'm tired of working for idiots. He said, well, let's start a company. What would you like to call it? I said, well, I had a mentor in New York City who was an Aquarius, and your company's called Aquarian Coatings Corporation. Let's call it Aquarian Accessories. He said, if that's what you want, you're the music guy, you pick the name. I said, well, there's no other percussion company with a name like Aquarian. So that's how we picked it out. It was not market research, it was just a personal thing.
Okay.
And everybody seemed to react positively to the name. Because people are always saying, how'd you come up with a name like Aquarian? It's so nice. You know, rather than the typical jargon, made-up names, you know.
Yeah.
So Ron and I got together, and we started Aquarian. And we decided that we were going to make accessories. We're not going to make drum sets, because the big international companies had already got that covered. And we thought we could make unique products and survive, and we have. We just finished our 35th year in business.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's really quite an achievement. And then we've had to be flexible and innovative and resourceful and all the stuff you have to do to keep the place going. But we get along very well as business partners.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't try to do what I should be doing, and I don't try to do what he should be doing. He's the manufacturer. I'm the drummer. And it's my job. Like, for example, one of our foremen came up and he's a terrific guy. He said, I found an easier way to make this snare drum hit. I said, well, let's check it out on the snare drum. I said, it doesn't sound as good as the one we're making now. He said, I know, but it's a lot easier to make it. I said, we're going to make it the hard way. Because that's what the guy's paying for. He's paying for this sound, not what's easy for the manufacturer.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's my job to kind of be, I figured out that if you're going to have a successful music instrument company of any kind, you have to have a musician in a position of power. He doesn't have to have the whole show. He doesn't have to be the boss of everything. But he's got to have some strength, a position that allows him to influence the quality. When I was at Rogers Drums, we had a meeting one day, and they said, we're going to change the needle bearings in the swivel-matic foot pedal to nylon bearings. I said, we have the best pedal on the market right now. You could hold the meter back and let it go, and it would go 10 revolutions before it would stop. I said, it's the smoothest pedal going. Even Buddy Rich uses it when he's endorsing Ludwig stuff. So he said, well, we're going to change it. I said, what for? He said, it would be cost-effective. And, Roy, you won't be able to tell the difference between the needle bearings and the nylon bearings. So when he brought a pedal into my office, I put it on my desk, I pulled the beater all the way back, and I let it go, and it wouldn't move. It didn't make one revolution. I said, oh, this is beautiful. And we started to get carloads of pedals back. Guys are disappointed and upset. That's when I said, I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
I got to work for a place where there's a little more devotion to the product. Yeah. My attitude is our job is to help drummers play music. It's not to trick them into buying stuff, or just to run a bunch of big name guys and say, buy our stuff because it's the greatest. What I like to do is, and it permeates our company, is we are here to help music, help drummers play music. And we're very too far from that. That's when I step in and say, wait a minute, guys, we're getting off track here. We're not trying to make trick objects or something that does some kind of parlor trick. We help the guy play music. It's a lifelong endeavor to play music. And we have to be serious about that.
Yeah.
So that's been our point of view from the beginning. That's
great. Would you say that where you guys are as a company, that you still have a lot of goals that you want to reach, or you're quite happy where you are and that might be kind of where you stay for a while?
Well, the way we look at it, my partner Ron agrees with me. I agree with him. You're either going forward or you're going backward. There's no such thing as standing still. Now, I'll be 80 years old in 2 weeks, and I'm here every day because I believe in what we're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I could take it easy. I haven't played in over 20 years. But, see, the way I look at it, I'm still involved with drumming.
Yeah.
I may not play anymore, but I'm still involved with the players and the endorsers and some of the young guys that are working for us that I've helped bring along. And like Chris Brady, I think you contacted him. Chris is like my right-hand man. I'm computer free. I'm the only guy here without a computer on his desk.
Okay.
So I say, Chris, help me out. I got to send an email. But he knows what to do.
Yeah.
But that way I can devote my time to having conversations like this one.
Yeah.
Talking to drummers. Whenever a drummer calls here with a problem, I tell my secretary, give that guy to me. Yeah. So I didn't think you'd want to talk to the guys with problems. You know, those are the ones I want to talk to because I want them to know that one of the two owners of the Aquarian cares about their situation.
Which is nice. Yeah, it's
I think
personal touch. You wouldn't get that at a lot of really big established companies like you guys. You can't
get a person on the telephone in most of these companies.
Yeah, I mean, more often than not, you've got your automated computer sort of voice, and you end up leaving messages on those kind of systems. So
I like the comedian who said, "I'd rather be insulted by a person than by a machine."
Yeah,
I thought that was a great line.
Very true. It's sad that it's come to that,
Isn't it? I was on the phone for 20 minutes trying to get a person on the phone the other day.
It's crazy.
And I gave up. I just said, well, the hell with it. I'm not going to... I'll just live without it.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously I've got a South African accent, and sometimes I phone certain things here, and without realizing, I guess my accent isn't as easy to understand as maybe a British accent on these kind of automated things, and so often I'll say something like 100 times before it kind of understands what I'm trying to say. It's quite frustrating.
Well, communication is always a problem. That's why I've written so many articles. I wrote articles for Modern Drummer for 12 years.
Yeah.
I never considered myself a writer.
Okay.
I considered myself a communicator. See, when I joined the big bands, I was the youngest guy in the band always. And if you were respectful and you were paying attention, you had some talent, and you tried to play your best, the older guys in the band would help you. And like they hit 2 and 4 hard on the last chorus, play that cymbal behind the piano, and they would give you things that made you sound better, made the band sound better. So it got to the point where one day I was the oldest guy in the band. The first time I did a clinic, a guy called me Mr. Burns. I'm like, wait a minute, what happened? Well, when I wrote these articles for Modern Drummer, I was the older musician on the bus talking to the younger guy who had just joined the band.
Yeah.
And what brought it about was my son was practicing his guitar in the garage. One day, my wife's getting dinner ready, so I went into the garage and sat down on my drums and said to my son, Steve, let's play a tune together. So he played some blues or something. When I went back in the house, I said, Steve has never played with anyone older than himself except me, and I'm his father. There's a communication break here.
Yeah.
And I think when the rock and roll thing started with the young people, the break was between the older jazz and big band musicians and the younger rock and roll musicians. Mm. There was a complete break off of passing on information.
Information, exactly.
So when I wrote those articles for Modern Drummer, I was trying to be that guy, the older musician passing along good information, not resentful or putting young guys down. Just that we all have problems. You may have trouble practicing. You may have trouble finding a drum teacher. And you may have trouble finding a gig. Things that everybody could deal with. Should I use heavy sticks? Stuff that every drummer has to try to figure out.
Yeah.
And I did that for 12 years.
Yeah, I love those articles. Those are the concept articles that you're talking about. And
yeah, right.
I mean, I used to read them as a teenager growing up, and I always thought they were very insightful. Am I correct in saying that people can go on the Aquarian website and read most of those articles now? Yeah,
that's true. When I started doing those articles, I had no idea they would have the impact or the longevity that they had. We still get requests from them all the time, and that's why they're on the website.
Well, I think what made those things so great was, you pick up Modern Drummer magazine, and as a magazine, it's great anyway, but often there would be all these exercises to play, and that's a whole nother thing. No one was ever talking about how you should approach things or how you should think about things. Or I think what happens a lot with lessons as well is because someone's paying for a lesson, the moment the tutor or the teacher gets talking about how to approach something, or maybe if they'll end up talking for more than 10 minutes, often a student or a parent of a student thinks that the teacher's talking too much. So I think those articles are a super, super good read for anyone who's actually wanting to be a serious drummer, because it's stuff that, like you say, it's those questions or those thoughts have to have crossed your mind if you want to be a serious drummer, and the information that you wrote about's invaluable. So,
well, I was at the Chicago airport years ago waiting for my bags. A well-dressed gentleman walked up to me and said, "Don't you Roy Burns write the articles for Modern Drummer?" I said, "Yes." He said, "That's the first thing I turn to every month when I get my issue." And he said, "I think your articles are great. They're so down to earth." He said, "Anybody can benefit from them." I said, "Well, I really appreciate that. You play the drums?" He said, "No, I'm a psychiatrist."
Crazy, man.
Psychologist. I'm a psychologist.
Yeah.
I said, "That's the best compliment I've gotten, Any person can relate to them because you attack basic problems, not some weird concept or theory. It's basic stuff, and he said it applies to everyone."
Yeah, it's amazing. I strongly suggest to anybody listening to this to go check those out. It's real thought-provoking stuff, people. You got to check that out. All right, cool. Let's move on a little bit. So, how much do you listen to modern music? Do you listen to much modern music at all?
Well, I was never a fan of popular music of any era.
Okay.
Because I had to play it to make a living. So my main interest is ethnic music, jazz music, the big band music, and classical music. So I don't listen to too much popular stuff. I sort of hear it as I go through the day, but I don't seek it out.
Okay.
only because when I get home after a day in the office, I want to put on some music that takes me away and helps me relax and sort of unwind, you know.
Yeah.
But I like any music played for itself. I don't like commercial music.
Okay.
Now, I played plenty of commercial music. I played a lot of TV shows. I played a lot of junk. I did a lot of stuff because I had to make a living and support a family.
Yeah.
And I'll be quite honest with you. I never made a lot of money playing jazz, you know. The big band era was, I caught the tail end of that, and that was the most of the, what I call good music that I had a chance to play.
Okay.
But I don't listen to the current stuff too much. But I'm always in touch with the drummers, especially drummers who come by here, come by to pick up some Drumheads or want to say hello. I always make time to talk with them, invite them into my office, and we sit down and they tell me what's going on. So I stay in touch that way, pretty much.
Yeah. I was going to ask if there were any artists nowadays that if you were still playing that you think you would like to play with, but I'll adapt the question slightly and ask you this. Any artist from any era, was there anybody that you would have loved to have done, say, a dream gig with?
Well, I'd like to have played with Oscar Peterson.
Okay.
The piano player. I played with Ray Brown, the bass player. I used to do the Monterey Jazz System in California as the house drummer.
Mm-hmm.
Did that for 9 years. And the first year I did it, Ray Brown was the bass player. And I heard Ray Brown when I was in high school. And to have a chance to play with him after hearing him and watching him for so many years was really a treat. And we got along great. So I told Ray later, I said, you know, I told my wife, now that I play with Ray Brown, everything is downhill. He liked that. But there was a lot of truth in it.
Yeah.
And I know even Buddy Rich one time said there are only half a dozen bass players in the country, and they're all named Ray Brown. That was his compliment, way of saying he's the best, you know.
Yeah.
So I liked the other thing that Buddy Rich said was an interesting quote. And they said, Buddy, what would you have done if the music you grew up with was like the music of today? He said, that would have been a bank robber. I think that the big band era, because it was basically dance music, was one of the few times in our history where the public taste and musicians' taste crossed or met.
Mm.
Like the bands were good and good musicianship, a lot of them, and then the public responded to them by the dance music and stuff. And then what's happened since then, the technicians have gotten control of the music.
Yeah.
So a guy emails a part in from San Francisco to New York City, and then they do some googly gook stuff to it, put some more layers of junk on top of it. How can you make music like that?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It means the technicians have gotten complete control.
Yeah, you're right.
Of a lot of situations. And I find that we've got all these technical guys with all this technical equipment, and we're getting the worst music we've ever had in our history, you know.
Yeah.
I think it's terrible.
Yeah, you're
and
right.
the other thing that's fallen by the wayside is instrumental music. Everything is singers.
Mm.
Now, I'm not against singers. We have to have singers. It's a natural thing. It's a good part, but not too many Tony Bennett's who I've worked for and played for, and people like that. But the instrumental side of music doesn't get much attention anymore on the radio or on DVDs or wherever it is that they have an outlet these days, because it's all changed with the record companies.
Yeah.
But I always liked instrumental music. I can only stand singers for a certain amount of time. I mean, they're very good, but I like hearing a string section and a brass section. I guess I'm a dyed-in-the-wool big band drummer, you know.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
I'm not saying the other music is bad. It's just what I prefer, you know.
Yeah, and that's totally cool, you know. It's personal opinion, and we should all be entitled to that. I think a lot of people try and push, you know, certain things and go, oh, you need to like that, or you have to like this, and that's not what music is about, you know. Music should be how it makes you feel. Like you say, you play some tunes when you get home from work to unwind, and that's what it should be. It should be what you feel when you listen to certain music. That's how it should be used, I think, you know.
I agree. Well, I turned down a lot of jobs that were well-paying just because I was going to have to play some stuff that was really stupid or put up with a leader or somebody in charge of things that was temperamental or follow me, even though I'm Russian, you got to follow me, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So this girl singer came on the Merv Griffin Show. Jake Hanna had taken my place on the Merv Griffin Show.
Mm-hmm.
And she looked up at Jake and says, "Drummer, follow me and swing like mad." Jake stood up, hitched up his pants, and says, "Baby, I can either follow you or I can swing like mad, but I can't do both at the same time." Well, she got mad and walked off the show, and he got fired. So I said, "Jake, why did you do that?" He said, "Oh, I was tired of playing that jive show anyway. I'll just stand it." I said, "Well, I needed the money."
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
Oh, very good. Tell me, Roy, what do you think the best advice you ever received in your career was?
Well, that's a good one. I think the best advice I ever got was when success comes your way, take it. Even if it isn't what you set out to achieve, because success doesn't come by that easily or that often. So don't be, it's like the guy who's in a boat or a ship and he's sailing and he has trouble and his sailboat goes down, or his motorboat, whatever it is. And he's floating along in the ocean. And it's getting late in the day, and the ship comes by and says, "We'll throw you a line." He says, No, that's all right. God will provide. So another boat comes by. He says, "No, I don't need help. God will provide." Finally, he says, "God, why have you deserted me?" And he said, "Fool, who do you think sent the first two boats by?" You know.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes you have to take the most successful route that's open to you. I always tried to take the best offer I had at the moment. And the other thing that I did that helped me more than anything was I took everything equal seriousness. If I accepted a job, I devoted myself to it 100%. Because I figured if I do that with everything I approach, I'll learn a lot. And I became like a fanatical learner. Mm. The idea was to learn from everything. Because you never know what will happen. Like I tell students, or used to tell students, 10 years from now, the music that you hear today is going to be gone. Mm. And the whole music scene will have changed. 10 years is a long time. And so you have to learn all you can while you're young. So when it changes, you'll be able to be able to adapt to it. Because it's not going to stay the same. And look how, just in 20 years or 30 years, it's changed totally, you know.
Completely.
But I always tell young people, just if you're going to do it, learn as much as you can, because you never know when you're going to need it. And I just became a learning fanatic, and that helped me a lot.
Yeah, it's good advice. If you could go back in time and tell your younger working drummer self anything, what do you think you would have told yourself?
I should have asked for more money if I played that good.
I wasn't expecting that. Very good. Oh, that's good. What about in a?
As you can tell, As you can tell, I have a good time.
Yeah, it's so good.
Maybe 80 in 2 weeks, but I think that you should get some enjoyment out of every day. At least a few laughs. If you don't take yourself too seriously, I think you can have a good time and still work hard and achieve some things. And you know, you're gonna get some good things and some bad things.
Exactly.
There's a friend of mine says, he said, "That's the way the pork chop." And that was his humorous line by saying, well, that's just the way things go. You win some and you lose some.
Yeah.
But you keep that positive attitude, things turn around, because what starts out badly can sometimes turn into a good thing. You never can be sure, so you always have to try to be aware and learn as much as you can. And have a few laughs, if possible.
Well, that's just it, you know, you might be turning 80 in 2 weeks' time, but your body might be 80, but you still sound extremely young at heart, you know?
I'm trapped in this old body, that's what it is.
Oh, amazing. So
I got a joke for you.
Yeah, go for it.
You ladies are walking through Beverly Hills at 6 in the evening, and a big frog jumps out of the bushes and says, "Quick, pick me up and kiss me on the lips, break the curse, and turn me into the world's greatest drummer. I can play double bass, symphonic, jazz, big band, trio. I play all the mallet instruments. I'm the world's greatest drummer, but you've got to kiss me on the lips and break the curse. The lady opens her bag and throws the frog in the bag and locks it. The other lady says, aren't you going to kiss him and turn him into the world's greatest drummer? She says, no way. So, well, why not? She says, are you kidding? I can make a lot more money with a talking frog than I can with a drummer.
Yeah, too true, unfortunately.
Ed Shaughnessy told me that story. I always get Ed credit.
He was great, yeah, great drummer. And just on that joke right there, while we're on that topic, Craig from the music shipping company told me that you've got some incredible, crazy drumming stories. So before I get to my next question, do you have any crazy, funny stories that are completely unrelated to an interview that maybe you want to share?
Well, let me think a minute.
Yeah, cool.
Oh, I got a good one for you.
Yeah, go for it.
I get a call on Saturday afternoon. This is a true story.
Okay.
And I'm doing the Merv Griffin Show on staff at NBC in New York City. So Saturday and Sunday we're off. The contractor had given me a lot of work when I was starving when I first got to New York. He said, Roy, I know you don't do club dates anymore, but I got a job pays $400 cash. They'll the piano player will pick you up, but you've got to help me out. You're the last guy I called. I've got to have a drummer for tonight, or I'll lose this contract. Mm-hmm. So, well, $400 cash. In those days, it sounds pretty good today. So anyway, I took the gig. We got out to the gig, and the big, tall trombone player by the name of Sonny something. He's 6'5", loud, kind of a rough personality. The piano player that picked me up just plays flowers like a society piano player. There's no bass player, and we have a tenor saxophone. So getting this band off the ground would be like you have to build a fire, you know? Because there's no rhythm, there's no bass, there's no rhythmic piano player, no guitar player. So the leader, Sonny, says to me, hey, come on. I said, what do you want me to do? What style would you like? He said, I want you to swing the band. And I'm thinking, man, you can't swing this thing. This is a disaster. So I'm going to the bathroom out in the hallway, and a friend of mine spots me, and he says to this guy, Sonny, he said, hey, you got a good drummer there. He said, that kid? He said, that's not a kid, that's Roy Burns. He's doing the Merv Griffin Show. And he works with Benny Goodman. You're pretty lucky to get him on a gig like this. So he comes, because I had that conversation explained to me by my friend later. Mm-hmm. He comes back in and he walks up to me and says, Roy, sounds great. I didn't know who you were. Complete change of attitude.
Yeah, Jekyll and Hyde, man.
I know it. So I'm on the way to do a clinic. In fact, it was Louis Dawson's hometown, Molina, Illinois. Mm-hmm. So we get into the music store, and the salesman I'm traveling with goes in the back to talk to the dealer because the clinic's going to be in another venue because the store's too small to hold it. So there's a guy picking out sticks at the counter. I'm standing there. I'm wearing a blue jean outfit, not dressed up. And the guy says, are you a drummer? I said, yes. He said, are you going to that clinic tonight? I said, well, I was thinking about it. He said, don't bother, the guy's no good. I said, what's the matter with him? There's no time, no style, no ideas, no technique. He's really not very good. I said, well, I guess you heard him play a lot then, huh? He said, no, I never heard him play, but I heard about him. I said, well, how would CBS and Rogers Drum send a guy all over the world to do clinics if he's as bad as you say he is? Yeah. It's politics. He said, by the way, my name's Gary. What's your name? I said, Roy. He said, oh, no. I said, oh, yes. He got all red in the face, and I said, look, I'm going to give you permission to put me down. If you catch my act and you don't like it, you're entitled to say whatever you want to say. But at least catch my act before you criticize me. Yeah. Well, he did come to the clinic, came up to me afterwards and said, I apologize. You were very good. It's a great show. And he said, I'll be more careful in the future. I said, well, that's great.
Yeah.
All's well that ends well, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
But he run into some funny situations, you know?
Yeah, I can imagine.
Well, my brother was a professional bowler, like bowling alleys.
Oh, cool.
He would manage bowling alleys and enter tournaments. And until he hurt his back, he was doing very well. So I come off at the Metropole in New York City, came to this place, the band played up behind the bar. We used to call it the lineup. So I came down to get out off to the bar, and the two guys in the corner of the bar had bowling trophies in front of them. So I stopped and I said, my brother's a bowler. Were you guys in a tournament? He said, yes, we were at Madison Square Garden. I said, how did you do? He said, we came in third. I said, well, that's nice. He said, you the drummer up there just now? I said, yes. And I said, you weren't too bad, I guess. I said, well, I guess I was about as good as third place, right? The guy says, I'm sorry. I said, that's okay. We're even. People say the strangest things.
Yeah, it sounds like you're so quick on your feet, man. It's really cool, you know?
Yeah, well, the best one was I was in Henry Adams' store, and Henry was one of my mentors and published my books originally, helped me negotiate my contract with Benny Goodman. And this guy comes up to me, and I'm waiting for a student to come and take a lesson. He says, hey, Roy, can I ask you a question? I said, sure. He said, you don't have any style, you don't swing, you don't have good time, you don't have good ideas. I said, well, so far I agree with you. What's the question? He said, why are you always working? So before I answer that, let me tell you, I have a bigger problem. I played better when I was 11 than I do now. He said, how is that possible? I said, I don't know. I'm afraid to pick up the stick between gigs because if I practice, I get worse. And I can't learn anything new because I can't practice. And he said, oh, I feel terrible. I shouldn't have said anything. I said, but I got another problem. NBC, CBS, Woody Herman, Lama Hampton, Benny Goodman, all these guys keep calling up and offering me jobs. As bad as I play, who am I to turn them down and hurt their feelings? So the guy's eyes just glazed over. He just walked away. He couldn't say a word. Henry was listening to this whole thing. He leaned over to me and he said, kid, you're going to be all right, you know. But I'd much rather do that than to get into an argument. You know?
Yeah, no, good for you, man. Good for you.
Yeah, but again, it's kind of funny. Yeah, I always had a good comeback.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It's great. It's I like it when it's done tastefully, and it sounds like that's what you did, you know? It's great.
Well, that's what I prefer. Yeah, I don't like getting into confrontations because it doesn't solve anything.
No, it doesn't. Negativity doesn't solve anything, you know?
No, it just makes everything worse.
Yeah, it just makes everybody around you negative, you know?
Since you're in the UK, the first clinic I did there in 1965 was for Rogers Drums. And the first clinic was in London, and we had 450 people. It was a tremendous turnout.
Yeah, great.
Because there hadn't been many clinics at that time. And once I played my single solo role, I had everybody's attention. So we get to the question and answer session, and the guy says, what do you think of Ringo Starr? I said, I never criticized anyone who makes more money than I do. Well, everybody just cracked up. And that set the mood for the whole clinic tour. Because the guys I was practicing with were watching me see what my answer was going to be. And like I said, hey, he must make those three guys happy because they're hiring him to play drums, right? Yeah. So if he does the gig, well, he did the gig. He did what they wanted. I say that's good, you know.
Would you advise that for people who want to get into clinics and things, that's maybe how they should approach it? They set a bit of a tone before they just go in all guns blazing. Do you think that's the way to do it? Or was that just the way you approached it?
I would think it was a personal thing. I used to do a thing with a hi-hat. I come out and just play a solo on the hi-hat.
Okay.
And I had a little piece of business, as they say, a little text to go with it. And I'd say, ask the average person what they think of this musical instrument. They'll say, that's not a musical instrument. That's something drummers use. I said, no, it's a hi-hat. It's a musical instrument. I said, ask somebody who knows nothing about music, like a singer, or better yet, a cop, you know. So anyway, we went on, and I did my bit. And at the end of the clinic, the guy comes up to me and says, Roy, can I speak to you? I said, yeah. He says, I'm a singer, I'm a drummer, and I'm a cop. And I want to talk to you about what you said about the hi-hat. I said, look, I was just trying to make a joke. You got me. And he said, it's okay, I understand. But I just want to let you know, there are those of us who are out there who can sing, play drums, and we're in law reinforcement, so don't overlook it. I said, no, I learned my lesson. You caught me out.
Yeah, exactly.
That was funny, yeah. I think the worst things are the ones where a guy goes up and plays an hour drum solo and then says, are there any questions? He comes in unprepared. You should have an outline prepared, material that you're going to talk about so a person can learn something. Just don't wing it. I think the worst clinics I've seen where the guy just came on unprepared. Yeah. But most of the guys, if they put something together that's designed to help young drummers or help them understand rhythms or understand styles, I think that's all good, you know.
Yeah. Did you ever see any clinics yourself? I mean, obviously you played at hundreds, but did you ever see anybody else do
Louis
one?
Belson do one. Louis Belson, when I was young, I saw him do one. And I saw Joe Morello do one. Let's see. I'm trying to think, who else did I see? Those guys made the biggest impression on me. But there weren't too many clinics in those days.
Yeah.
And then I saw a couple of guys whom I won't mention said, well, just answer me a question, I'll try to answer it. And they were totally unprepared. And the audience looked so disappointed. The other thing I noticed, when a good friend of mine, I won't mention his name, came out to do a clinic, he said, look, if you want to hear me play, buy my records. The records that I'm on. He said, I just came here to do a clinic, I didn't come here to play. And you could see the shoulders in the audience just sink down in the chairs. Like, he's not going to play anything, he's just going to talk to us. That was always disappointing because they want to see you play. And there's a lot of times you go to a concert, if you can find a good one, you're sitting too far back. You can't see what the drummer's doing. And drummers like to see what's happening, you know.
Exactly, yeah.
That was the good thing about the jazz clubs in New York when I was there. You could sit close to the stage and see what the drummer's doing with both his hands and his feet. And you could learn something as well as enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
I think everybody has something to offer, you know.
Yeah, I think
Cozy Cole was a guy that I subbed for. He's a very nice man. And we were talking about people. He said, you know, Roy, he said, every drummer has one good lick. He has at least one good idea. Now, if you can find what that one idea is that he has that's good, you'll learn something. Putting him down and criticizing him for all the other licks he has, but they're not as good, you won't learn anything. And you come off as a bad guy. Yeah. Just try to figure out what that one good thing the guy does, and you'll do a lot better. And I thought that was great advice.
Yeah, very good advice. Okay, Roy, last interview question. Have you got any last words of advice that you could possibly share with young up-and-coming drummers, or even drummers who are established that you think they could still possibly learn from?
Well, I think you just have to approach each gig as though it were your last. Try to be as prepared and as truthful with yourself as possible. And if it's a new gig, make sure you've done your homework. But if you played every night as though it's your last night, you'll have more enjoyment, more fun in your life, and I think you'll play better. That's my motto. Yeah.
Well, Roy, that's it for me. Thank you so much once again for your time.
Real pleasure, and I enjoyed talking with you. And I like the way you conducted the interview. It gave me some space, and I appreciate that.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Great talking with you.
Thank you, Roy.
So long.
Bye.
Well, there we have it. The one and only Mr. Roy Burns. I had such great respect for that man. Still do. And I'm pretty confident that I'm not alone. If you'd like to find out more about Roy, simply check out the Aquarian Drumhead website or just Google Roy Burns. There's so much stuff out there. The guy was a legendary figure in the drumming world and the music world in general. As usual, and I know I mentioned it at the top of the episode, but please leave us a rating or review. And I'll close with my usual spiel of, if your band needs help, if you need help, if you want to talk about marketing, PR, album releases, EPKs, stage plots, how to get the most out of your rehearsals, how to get the most out of your social media, etc., 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 drop me a DM. I'm always happy to help. My name is Travis Mark. For all things Travis Mark or Musicians Mentor related, please check out musicians-mentor.com. That's it for this week. I'll see you on the next one. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Peace.
All right, here we go.
New Phineas and Ferb is here.
We're back, baby.
For 104 more days
I know what we're gonna do today.
of summer vacation.
I am ready for summer shenanigans. Let's do it. Oh, yeah.
All right. We're gonna bust Phineas and Ferb once and for all.
Are we gonna do this again?
New inventions, shenanigans, innators, adventures, and songs.
Brand new summer vacation.
New Phineas and Ferb starts June 5th on Disney Channel and next day on Disney Plus on DisneyPlus.Disney.com.